new that have never been done before.
We the people tell the government what to do. It doesn't tell us. We the people are the driver. The government is the car. And we decide where it should go and by what route to do. We the people are free. And I hope we have once again reminded people that man is not free unless government is limited.
Howdy, folks. How are you? I hope you had a wonderful Easter. You didn't get caught on the roads. If you've got an EV and you were stuck for 5-6 hours in some places, the stories are, waiting to get charged, particularly if you were traveling along the Bruce Highway, the Pacific Motorway or the Pacific Highway between Sydney and Brisbane, or between Sydney and Melbourne on the Hume. Apparently a very uncomfortable time for everybody. And it wasn't lost on those people who were pulling up at the servo, putting admittedly overpriced diesel in their vehicles, and petrol for that matter, but taking as long as you would normally expect a busy servo to take for you to fill up. You might have to wait 10 minutes. You don't have to wait 5 hours. So a decidedly ugly weekend on the road from that perspective. I know in Queensland, it was a very bad weekend on the roads for dickheads, although probably better for the rest of us as they won't be on the road to trouble us anymore. That's probably a little bit unfair. I don't know the circumstances of all the accidents, but I know of two that I'm aware of which were high speed. One of the people that died was just terribly unfortunate, and a mother up from Victoria on holidays, I believe, and got T-boned, essentially, by a car that may or may not have been involved in some hooning events, Easter hooning events in the South Brisbane area. But anyway, we'll find out more, I guess, as days and weeks progress on the horror on our roads that way. There have been a couple of others who've shuffled off this mortal coil, of course, around the rest of the country. Commiserations to families, of course, at this terrible time. Speaking of terrible times, well, we know Watler is having a fairly terrible time of it. Of course, I'm talking about this good-looking bloke here. Greg has been in hospital. He's been having some work done on his foot and more particularly his toes, returning blood supply to said toes. Now, we did point out there are a few issues going on with his little pinky toe, if you like, on his left foot. He is getting appropriate care and antibiotics, but we are going to step him up a level and give him some X39 patches, which he already has some. He's a bit of a user, so to speak, but he has them tucked away somewhere, and he only has 5 of them. So I'll sort him out with some X39 patches, and stem cells are a magnificent thing when you're old. You don't make too many of them anymore. And that's because as we get older, we make less, or have less copper peptides in our blood, and our copper peptides is what makes our stem cells. This X39 technology is light technology, absolutely wonderful. It doesn't work for everybody, but it certainly has a big effect on me with my neck and headache issues, with my wrist when I broke that, and even today with any kind of, I guess, aging pains. Some might say arthritis, but I refuse to believe I have it. And it helps dramatically with whatever those aches and scrapes are. And we'll see if we can't make a difference to his toe. I would love to be able to wrap one around his toe, but I don't know that that's the proper application. And the doctors that are currently viewing his toe might not like that. So we'll have to try and secrete it somewhere on his person where the doctors aren't going to find it and the nurses aren't going to rip it off. But X39 patches on the way, buddy, and I'll catch up with you very soon. Before we get into Life, the Universe tonight, I know it's a bit late getting the show together. It wasn't going to be. I have actually been trying to put this show together on this laptop since about 3:30 this afternoon. And I'm not sure how far we'll get into the show before the whole thing cooks itself and turns itself off. But that's essentially what happened today. And I had to let it rest, obviously, and cool down. What I also found is that the little vacuum that I have to clean keyboards and get dust out of little shitty places is also extremely good at extracting the heat out of it, particularly through the keyboard. So I used that quite considerably today, and then I think I've burnt it out. It got very hot while doing it, though. So anyway, bit of fun, learning experience for us all. First in the house tonight, Huxley Bailey. Hey, nice to have you in. And coming through off the Rumble side of universe. Wonderful. And what there was first in the other hole. There you go. I didn't catch up with that. Lovely lady Rada is in the house as well. And Connie. What's this one? Your son was in Afghanistan and lost 3 mates from a rogue soldier on the base. That's interesting because part of Ben Robert Smith's story has something to do with that particular episode. 3 Australian soldiers being shot by an Afghani who was supposedly helping the Australians, but or helping the people, helping his country. And they were embedded with the Australian troops, and this bloke's picked up a weapon and killed 3 of them and then jumped the fence, done a runner, and they sent our most elite people out to hunt him. We will talk about that a little bit later on. The lovely Susan is in the house. You believe that everything that has and is happening in the world, even here in Australia, is meant to be? I believe it's all part of the Q plan. You've been watching interviews and reading books on Q. I'm with you for maybe different reasons, but I'm certainly with you. And it's interesting. I guess some of the things that I've seen, a lot of the things, I didn't get into Q until well after Q was a thing. Whoops, where's that phone going to be beeping at me all night? Let me mute that. Yeah, I really didn't get into Q until after Q was a thing, and I've never been able to get into the encoding or the decoding of the Q messages. That is a bit above my pay grade. I did get involved with somebody who was doing that, and then for whatever reason backed away from it rather rapidly, and I've never found anybody else who's been close enough to do the decode. So I'm not good with the numbers, you see. So when you've got to go and faff about with all of that, it gets very messy. So I've derived my belief from similar but different stances. So I've seen the Q stuff, the decodes, and I've gone off to try and find my own qualifying evidence, if you like, and used independent ways and means to do that. And I did that for a long time, maybe a year, maybe not quite a year. And it wasn't until I came across the first 10 episodes or the first 10 segments of The Fall of the Cabal, which at that time was only available on BitChute from memory. And if you haven't seen it, or you have family, friends, and others who are just completely disbelieving of what's going on in the world, and you could actually get them to sit down to watch anything that goes from maybe 10 or 15 minutes to 45 minutes, it will explain history in a way that you never, ever, ever would have dreamt. And for many of us, me included, it resonated as truth. It all fitted together in my head. Now, okay, some might say I've got a weird head, but I haven't got a bad one. It's not terribly good looking, but I have no bad intent. So I look for that sort of thing, but it didn't seem to have any of that. So The Fall of the Cabal, if you haven't seen it, but be prepared. There are a lot of shocks, particularly in the first 10, and then there is another 10 after that. And I'm not even sure if Ozenbard, what's her name? Somebody rather Ossenbard from the Netherlands, I want to say, has done all the research on this, and it is spectacular. And there may even be a 3rd series now, I have a sneaking suspicion. So great one to wake people up. The lovely Aussie Sue is in the house. Lovely Easter to you. I saw a beautiful photo that you put up on your Facebook page. I don't know if it was AI generated or not, of a sunset. I'm guessing, no, maybe it was a sunset, in which case it probably was AI generated, because you wouldn't get that sort of sunset where you live. Might have been a sunrise, maybe. Anyway, beautiful photo. You do generate some very beautiful images. You've got your eye on AI very nicely. Who else is in the room? G'day, Donna. G'day, Ian. Hello, Jude. My man in South Australia, Pete from Pinaroo. That would be my other man from South Australia. Nice to have you on board. The lovely Susan. Again, hello, Ann Penny. Donna. Did I say Donna before? Don't know. Anyway, you're all in the house. Lovely to see you. Nearly caught up. And I guess you're all explaining how many Easter eggs you didn't eat over Easter. I didn't eat any chocolate at all over Easter. Nada. Zip. Not a freaking thing. It was very good. Well, never been a chocolate eater anyway, so it doesn't really matter. All right, bit of a shock in Sydney today. Ben Roberts-Smith was arrested at Sydney Airport when he arrived in Sydney on a flight down from Brisbane. He was arrested on board the aircraft, which would have meant the police came on first up and escorted him from his seat before anybody else got off the plane. That would have been, nice for him, don't you think? If he hasn't been already, maybe the 6 o'clock news has been and gone, but I haven't seen anything on any of the other news stories. If he hasn't already been charged, he is very likely to be charged with 5 war crime murders from his time in Afghanistan. These stem from they are in fact the same charges that he faced in a defamation trial, which he lost to Channel 9, I don't know, 12 months ago, thereabouts. And now they're going to try and prosecute these in court. Now, the defamation trial that he lost is to a much lesser standard than a criminal trial. But Ben Roberts-Smith is now, if charged, facing life behind bars, the rest of his life. Now, there was a report brought out in November of 2020. It was called the Brereton Report. It was put together by a guy called Major General Paul Brereton, and it investigated the actions of Australian special services or special forces between 2005 and 2016. In that report, he found credible information that 39 unlawful killings of civilians and prisoners, had occurred. Now, that's led to ongoing criminal investigations and major reform in the ADF. I'm not exactly sure what that major reform is, but I'd be surprised if it's anything good. Ongoing criminal investigations. To my knowledge, I might be wrong, but to my knowledge, if charged, Ben Roberts-Smith will be the only person charged for what appears to be 5 war crime murders out of 39. So where's the other 34 happening, and who's being prosecuted there? And why isn't that snide little journalist from Channel 9 who is just against our defence forces in so many ways, while smiling and saying he's all for them, he's going to be the undoing of, well, hopefully a great many things, but I certainly hope it will not be the undoing of the Defence Force. I hope that members of the Defence Force learn from this, that blokes like this Nick McKenzie are not to be trusted in any way, shape or form. They are not your friends. They are blood-sucking leeches looking for a way to get a story and then bend that story. And he has been found wanting in his journalistic morals and ethics, particularly on this subject, on a great many levels of this subject. But of course, Channel 9 media do not bother promoting that too much at all. They just think it is. Anyway, Ben Roberts-Smith, should he be charged, will have to face a jury of his peers. I'm not exactly sure where his peers would be. He lives in Brisbane, so the trial you would think would be held in Brisbane. Being a federal trial. It can be held anywhere, but being a murder thing, it'll be a Supreme Court trial, no doubt. Well, there's one of those in Queensland. He's been, by the look of it, been charged under federal laws. So does that mean it has to go to the federal court? Will it have to be heard in Canberra? God help him. Or Sydney? God help him more. Would it not be better to have a jury of his peers in Brisbane? It's what I'd be asking for at the very least. His support is in Brisbane and around Brisbane, as far as I'm aware, and he has a lot of support. I know a great deal about what's gone on behind the scenes in the lead up to this. I know enough not to say certain things. I understand procedures, certainly at that time. I understand why there are command helicopters that fly around the engagement areas, particularly when our special forces troops are on the ground. They work in very small groups. And while the helicopter is not hovering above them, it will be at some high flight level above them. It is able to get down to them very quickly and offer support by way of the guns on board, should that be required. However, that main purpose of that helicopter is to stay well above the battlefield, and it is a command point. And sitting in that helicopter, aside from the pilots and whoever else, the gunner and whatnot might be in there, there is a sergeant usually from the Special Air Service who is directing matters on the ground. He is, in fact, the senior officer. He's overseeing the battlefield, and he might be overseeing one or two or three different teams that could be operating within a fairly localized area, but not working together, if you know what I mean. Now, the other reason that they have those sorts of helicopters up there is so that decisions can be made by command and relayed to the ground very quickly. It's reasonably difficult in areas like Afghanistan to get good radio contact from the ground back to your command post, which might be tens, if not 100 or more kilometers away. And especially if you need to get back to HQ, which is definitely more than 100 kilometers away. In that case, what you need is to be up high, and that's why they have a helicopter and associated other military-grade electronics and communications equipment that allow them to transmit all the way back to base and get direct instructions from those people sitting at the desks, wearing all the command jewelry and supposedly being the elite soldiers of the country, who have now got themselves into a position where they're planning the war rather than actually doing anything in it. The decisions are not made on the ground by the people who are on the ground. I would also suggest to you, well, I'll just ask you a simple question. Do you believe for a moment that anybody in the SAS would be promoted beyond private if they didn't take orders? Do you believe that anybody could gain a corporal's rank if they went off and made decisions by themselves? Evidence of those decisions would be plentiful in this person's past, if that is the case. I don't know. I have no access to wherever Ben was before Afghanistan or what he was involved in. But for me, I would find that a very interesting and need to know sort of question. Tall poppy syndrome is something, I don't know if it's unique to Australia, but certainly Australians do it the best. We chop tall poppies down every day, and we do it brutally, usually. Whether it be a meme, whether it be, a comment, whether it be shouting of abuse. It happens all the time. We have to, I hope, start shouting in a different way, a way that's going to help us with Ben Roberts-Smith, a way that's going to enlighten the public to the real truth of how this thing works and why this smells bad. It starts in Vietnam. Ben Roberts-Smith's father, I beg your pardon, not Ben Roberts-Smith's father, former Governor General Hurley was in Afghanistan and, I beg your pardon, in Vietnam. At that time, he was in Vietnam with the father of the sergeant that was sitting in that helicopter I just told you about, who was either making command decisions because he is a sergeant or was getting command decisions from HQ and relaying them to the ground. Now, tragically, that bloke died. And he died hunting down the bloke that Connie's son lost 3 friends to. Connie's son was in Afghanistan. Very lucky he probably wasn't one of these victims. Now, they sent out the best to go and hunt this bloke down, because after he'd shot these 3 guys, he did a runner and was able to somehow get out of the base. He got through the wire and disappeared into the sand, and they never saw him again. Well, they kind of did. Well, they definitely did. However, when they got a bead on where he was hiding, it was in a small village. And I am led to believe that on the night they went to go and get him, this particular sergeant, who had been in the command helicopter over the area of engagement that Ben Roberts-Smith is likely to have been charged, at least in 1, if not 2 of the cases, maybe more, the chopper that he was in, this guy was out fighting that night. He was sitting on the door of the chopper, as all Tier 1 operators like to be, foot on the skid, weapon ready, and they came into land at or near a small village in the middle of bloody nowhere. And as they were coming into land, this particular sergeant copped a bullet to the throat and died. Now, his dad was in Vietnam with the Governor General. Why does that matter? Well, when the Brereton report came out in 2020, it was redacted almost completely, word for word. Almost. Very few people got to see an unredacted copy. But after some pressure, I'm led to believe that this sergeant who died fighting for Australia, died as a hero, died trying to avenge 3 of his mates, and it's tragic that this has happened. He had also served with the Governor General in another theatre. I want to say it was an African theatre. And so there was some association through the whole family with the Governor General, who got a copy of the unredacted Brereton report and showed it to them. Now we get to talk about jealousy in the military, and there is, make no doubt about it, a huge amount of jealousy for anybody who is awarded anything remotely like to the level that Ben Roberts-Smith was. Ben had been awarded the 3 highest medals that we can give, including the Victoria Cross, which they're now going to try and take off him. Part of the reason for that is because there is a severe amount of jealousy that Ben Roberts-Smith was awarded the VC. Many people are not aware that a VC awardee, whenever they walk into a room from now until they die, think of, I don't know, Anzac Day at the RSL. But not even that. Walk into a reunion, walk onto base for something, to do a speech for something or whatever. Retired and serving current military personnel have to salute you. That means if you're an admiral, or you're a general, or you're a lieutenant colonel, you salute a corporal every time he walks in the room. And they hate it. So too do the corporals, just between you, me, and the gatepost. But the officers absolutely detest it. Now, I'm also told, and I don't know Ben, we've never met, we've never spoken, I've tried. I think God's kept us apart for a reason. I'm not quite sure what that reason is, but if that's the way it's meant to be, that's the way it's meant to be. But it's my understanding that a scapegoat is needed, particularly in the cases that this prick of a journalist has sunk his teeth into. There is some doubt about the veracity of the stories, sorry, I beg your pardon, the testimony of the witnesses that Channel 9 will bring to bear. Some of those witnesses' testimony was found quite wanting in the civil trial. A lot of it certainly came across as personal jealousy, a dislike for Ben Roberts-Smith. And I am led to believe that Ben Roberts-Smith did nothing to engender great feelings of friendship with too many people. I believe that he had certain aspects to his personality and uniform that made him not terribly well liked, but, not roundly hated either. However, the not terribly well liked part might have come from the higher ups. However, they do have enough pressure put on those that served in with him and around him that at least 4 of them are going to testify that he's committed these acts. Now, the acts he'll be charged with are either committing the deed, pulling the trigger himself, or ordering somebody else to do it, a subordinate. And you might remember having seen some of the footage of a subordinate turning around and asking a soldier whether or not he should do this guy. He's standing over him in a paddock with his gun, and there is a pause, and then there is some sort of communication that says yes. Can't remember whether it was actually vocal or a signal, and this guy shoots him. Tragic. But the pause, I believe, is the communication between the ground and the helicopter. Decision. What do we do with this? Because if you know your SAS history, and I'm sure many of you do, if you don't, there was, and maybe still is, I think it was on the ABC or on the SBS, a bloody magnificent series about the SAS and how it came into being. I recommend it to you all. But the SAS work behind enemy lines. The SAS have never, I underscore this with great lines of intent, the SAS have never, as far as I'm aware, while they are on mission, taken prisoners. If they go in to get somebody, that's an extraction. That's a different thing. But if they are out perched on a mountainside somewhere and Mustafa and his AK-47 walk past, or, Muhammad and his high-frequency, high-power handheld radio and a goat herding stick in the other hand walk past, you might raise your eyes a bit at that. Forgot where I was going with that, so I'll move on. But you get the idea. And I'm also concerned about what this is going to do for the morale of particularly our Tier 1 operators and those that support them, Tier 1 being the people who go in and do the deed. They are the shooters, if you like, the operators. These people ordinarily have been 100% fully supported by government and by their own mechanism, their own regiment, their own army, navy, air force, depending on what service they're in. And they all have their own special service versions. We don't hear too much about anything else other than the SAS, but there are other crews, so to speak. How do we help Ben Roberts-Smith? Well, I think what we need to do is keep an eye out for the lies that are going to be told, the fact that they have no body, they have no access to any kind of site, have no access to Afghanistan, so they can't go and pick up shell casings, they can't exhume bodies and do autopsies, they can't do anything. So they're going on the hearsay evidence, supposed eyewitness evidence, of what I believe will be some fractured egos, and who are now in so deep that they've got to stick with the lie and hope to God it sticks. But there are so many inconsistencies with what I would call operational norms that I can't see how he can be found guilty. But they are pushing this for some reason. So could this be to show just how pathetic our government is, just how controlled, just how contrived? And could this be a way that opens up the eyes of many in the military to the control that's been exerted over them, which they've hitherto sniffed but not believed? God, I freaking hope so. But I'm going to try and keep up with the Ben Roberts-Smith story as much as possible. I don't know why I feel so close to it, but I feel extremely close to it. So we'll keep you appraised. All right, the moon shot. Right. It's more moon shit. All right, I'm going to show you. This computer has been playing up. I've downloaded 3 or 4 different videos of this that wasn't somebody else's TikTok and had much better pictures. But I just want you to watch
Artemis
this.
2 now bound for the moon. Humanity's next.
Look. Yup, that is exactly what you think it is. A zip line taking the astronauts off of the rocket right before it goes up and flies straight up and then down and lands in the ocean, because they're not actually going to space.
Good roll pitch.
Because it's not real like you know it. There's a reason why the first moon mission...
Anyway, you get the idea. I was more interested in the escape pods. So what he showed there are 4 gondolas. Those gondolas are, if you like, on the back side of the tower and are used as emergency escape systems for astronauts and other technical personnel who might be on the rig while loading it up or for whatever and have to get off it very, very quickly. It's also primarily designed for the astronauts to escape if there is some kind of an issue in the pre-launch sequence. And the whole thing is essentially loaded in hydrogen bomb at that stage. So it's their fastest way off is to jump into one of those gondolas. And I think they get 1 each and shoot down this line that will take them essentially to the beach out the back there in Florida. So interesting that they happen. But to be honest, the one that first caught my attention was in the very first NASA briefing, which once again I thought I'd recorded, but the system has no knowledge of it. So I did manage to take a screenshot of the image that she was referring to. Now, there was a lovely lady who was telling us how the image that she was showing us, this image, was the first image of the Earth shot in, I think she said 53 years, might be 56 years. But, you know, shot from deep space of the globe, and it was shot as the sun was about to come up, unquote. She referenced the aurora, which you can see at the top right hand of the screen of the shot, that sort of green little thing there. And if you diagonally go across the disc to the other side, you'll see there is an aurora down there as well. And then on the bottom right third, if you like, of the disc, you see this corona, which is, judging by the light source that you can tell from the shot where it's coming from, is coming from behind. Otherwise, we wouldn't see that beautiful semi-crescent thing there that's happening. Now, the only problem that I really have, well, I've got two problems. The first problem that I had with this is that if the sun is coming up behind the Earth, how come we can see this, the country, the oceans, the clouds? How come we can see it? Because we're currently on the dark side if the sun is coming up on the other side there, aren't we? Anyway, maybe it's just that's something I've got wrong. God knows I got a lot of things wrong before. However, I am also particularly interested to learn about where our satellites are. Because I've looked really hard. I've blown that picture up. I downloaded what they called a high-def version. I don't think it really is, but I downloaded a version of it and looked, and I can't see anything, which is a little bit surprising when you think about it, because there are, and I don't want to be disingenuous about this, there are between 14 and 15,000 active satellites floating around the Earth right now. This is what they look like. Now, the ones that are inactive and still floating around the Earth, well, that takes the number up closer to 20,000. And then there's all these bits of space debris and other chunky things that have been left in orbit by varying moon shots. So why don't we see any of that in any of the photos? I think there's a reason they call it not a space agency. Yeah. Diane, you're right onto it. And deception is what it is all about. They are sending back some magnificent images from inside the spacecraft, and how exciting it is to be able to see these people, you know, supposedly live. I don't think they are. I don't think they've had a live thing yet. Bear in mind, these are the same people that we weren't allowed to see live getting into the spacecraft. No pictures of that. Bear in mind, they're providing pictures back to Earth aside from that beautiful disc one I just showed you there. Anything that comes from the outside of the craft looks like it was filmed back in 1969, or maybe 67 or 68 with one of the first passes of the moon. We've got 8K cameras. We've got 8K video that can be live streamed. We've got all sorts of, I mean, I have 4 terabytes of storage in a hard drive that's the size of the palm of my hand. It will take a lot of really nice detailed pictures in very high definition on there, like thousands. How much space do they need to be able to transmit? Oh, look, even if they don't transmit them, maybe we're going to get those really good high def pictures when they come back. What I don't understand is why we're not getting them now. It's weird. But anyway, what we are getting is some beautiful, beautiful, beautiful pictures like that. Unfortunately, there are people working on the set that are pointing out how it's actually working. And yep, these sorts of pictures are being leaked out. And then there's this one. I love this. This shows how pics work. They pick you up, let you hang. Notice anything similar about that? Even if you go up to your TV, I've only got a very small screen here, but if you go up to your TV and have a look at that girl's hand and her thumb and compare it with that one or this one, it's probably better. particularly, her left thumb. Pretty wild. At any rate, first pictures from the dark side of the moon have been sent back, you'll be pleased to know. And that's what it looks like. The Albanese government isn't concerned, nor apparently is Trump. He's more concerned about anything else except this, apparently. Anyway, let's move on. Many people won't be familiar with this place, but this is the Ampol refinery at Lytton in Brisbane. This refinery produces and supplies fuel to essentially all of Queensland and certain parts of northern New South Wales. It provides fuel to its partners, BP, Shell, and a variety of, well, until recently, a variety of independent fuel distributors throughout southeast Queensland and further afield. Over the weekend, and this is why this computer is an issue, another piece of video I've saved, or I thought I'd saved, but has disappeared. A truck driver, one of those tanker truck drivers, had enough and finally came out and told the truth. Now, we've been hearing stories from drivers who weren't prepared to come on camera and tell the truth because it would cost them their job. This bloke has had enough, and he was driving for an independent fuel distributor. He is a Queensland truckie who had to come from well inside Queensland down to Tamworth so that he could fill up his two trailers and then take it back to Queensland to service his Queensland clients. Why? Because the Lytton refinery had decided to close its doors, or at least limit the number of independent fuel trucks it was allowing in there and out every day, and how much fuel they were allowed to take. Now, I've put a call in today. I've sent an email today to try and speak to somebody from there about this to find out if there's any truth to that. I'd be very intrigued to learn that if there are millions and millions and millions of gallons, as I'm prepared and led to believe, they're already on site just sitting in storage. Because I believe that this picture that I showed you of Lytton doesn't show huge volumes of storage, but I believe there is also underground storage there too. I don't know how true it is. I'm not that kind of person. I do know it looks very pretty at night, but not real flash. So neither is there getting back to people. In fact, I just heard my email go bing, so let me just have a bit of a look and see if nobody's replied from them. So I guess we'll wait and see whether anything comes out. Otherwise, you might feel the urge to contact them. That phone number that you ring, anytime you ring this place, it will go to the security shack, and they will just get you to leave your name and details and point you in the direction, or they will pass your message on. So that's how good that's going to be. But if this is true, and if there are other truck drivers who are prepared to come out and confirm that, tanker truck driver or owner drivers who cannot get refilled like they usually would be out of the Brisbane refinery, I think we need to do something about that. Clearly, they're just feeding themselves while blowing our prices out of the water. Now, in Bali the other day, $1.30 a litre. Apparently going up to $2 a litre maybe next week. That would be a big jump in Bali, I suspect. But that's a huge jump in anybody's language. But I don't know. We'll wait and see. I don't think our Lytton refinery supplies Bali. Not our problem. Our problem is this Lytton refinery seems to be providing Ampol, Shell, BP with their oil, their fuels, and denying the regionals for a reason. I don't know what that reason would be. And they don't seem to be interested in telling us. Frankly, this probably leads into what I'm going to talk about next, which is the big parade protest that is trying to be arranged for the 26th of April down in Canberra. This is the immigration rally that Shallow Chal is putting on. Scott Challen, his name is, has been a big star with Karl Stefanovic recently. He's been appearing on a couple of the mainstreamers podcasts, and he puts across a very good argument for what we need and what we want. There are a few interesting factors about it. All of a sudden, Scott's running an anti-immigration rally, and we're all going back to Canberra, or at least that's his intent. Now, this is the parliamentary calendar. He wants to hold this event on the 26th of April, the day after Anzac Day. And I've got to admit, Anzac Day in Canberra would be rather special if you want to go and have a look at the War Memorial. Wish to God they'd get that new air museum opened. But then there's the 26th, where they want to do this protest. You can see that there are no politicians in Canberra on the 26th of April. None. They'll be back a couple of weeks later for the budget, but nobody's going to be there. Not even the person, I don't even know if this is a federal letter or not, but this is a letter that Julian Hill, MP, wrote and sent to all mayors. It essentially says, what wonderful people you are. Thank you for supporting the immigration push. What we're calling for you to do, now that we have been able to speed up our Australian citizenship application process and approvals process, is we need you to do more citizenship ceremonies, more of them, bigger ones, get more people in and do them more often. And we're really happy that you're playing along with the game so far. That's what that letter says. So, look, I can see a reason why there is a reason to march about immigration. In fact, Beck Freedom and the crew have been saying that now for how long? And interesting, Scott Challen was one of Beck Freedom's organisers in Brisbane until he somehow managed to gain control of that, and the stage became a very political stage after that. It wasn't a people's stage in any way, shape or form. Maybe that's what people in Brisbane wanted, but Pauline Hanson and crew certainly were there, and there were others, libertarians. I think Jared Rennick made an appearance at one of those events too. So they did share the stage, but they shared it with the professional politicians, not so much the people, but that's another story. It'll be interesting to see what comes from this rally on the 26th. I don't really know what's going to come of it. Have my doubts, if I'm honest, just between you, me, and the gatepost. But we shall watch and see. Speaking of watching and seeing, more Epstein news. Now, the Epstein files that were released are just the gift that keeps on giving. Unfortunately for so many people, they're not giving up a huge amount of information, at least that's coming out publicly at the moment, about Donald Trump. There are some very interesting tidbits of information coming out about South Australian Police Force, particularly in Port Pirie, and a number of police officers that are named. Those names are not redacted. I think Rachel Vaughan has done a video on some of that. If it's not her, somebody else has. Worthwhile digging up and having a look at. But these new allegations from Jeffrey Epstein, the Epstein files, stem from an email from a redacted person to him. Now, this email came to him in March of 2025, and the subject line says, "Preparing for pandemics." The key line says, "Please find attached a draft agenda for the meeting on preparing for pandemics as requested. Let's discuss next steps. For example, how to officially involve the WHO and ICRC, i.e. co-branding." Co-branding is a very interesting word. Very interesting word. Now, Epstein obviously was the kingpin in a pedophile and blackmail racket that had been going on for some years. He had absolutely no medical credentials whatsoever, but he is, for some reason, invited to be one of the few people to shape a global pandemic strategy and decide how the WHO would be best used to put a public face to it all. Now, the co-branding thing matters because it exposes everything. It confirms that the whole thing was a fake. They needed a face for the manufactured crisis. They weren't preparing a virus. They were preparing for control. And there is a timeline, a provable timeline that comes with it. Now, in 2015, Epstein receives that pandemic agenda straight from Geneva, pushing the WHO cover. From 2017 to 2019, Epstein Island and New York's mansion both hosted biotech billionaires, AI surveillance geeks, and pandemic gaming sessions with the exact people who later on ran the show. Then in early 2020, the scripted outbreak hit, and of course, the WHO declared the pandemic right on cue. Lockdowns get rolled out around the world. In 2025, Trump forces millions of pages to be unsealed, and this information pops out over the last day or two, as it says. Interesting things to learn. Oh, I'm trying not to talk about Donald Trump because there's so much to say, and I don't know whether or not the time has passed and whether or not they're now blowing up bridges or nuclear power stations in Iran. If that is the case, then it's going to be interesting. I find it quite ironic that people are calling Donald Trump out for war crimes when they're very prepared to ignore war crimes that have been committed by a number of presidents of the Democratic persuasion, particularly in the last, call it 15 years, even 20 years, let's be generous. Anyway, won't get into it. If they are blowing up those places, though, I think the world's in for a terribly bad time in the not too distant future, sadly. There's going to be a lot more detail come out about the Epstein relationship to the pandemic, I'm led to believe. I've heard some stories previously. No files have come out yet to confirm it, but I have heard some stories previously that there was a lot of testing of things went on Epstein Island, and it's possible that the various batches of this thing were tested on people on or particularly under that island. So we'll wait and see whether or not there is news of that comes out. Here's something fun for all you Victorians. Good, the Noticer is all over this. God love them. I get a lot of stuff from the Noticer. Worthwhile checking it out. Every new Victorian law now needs to go past an Aboriginal approval process under the treaty that they've put in. And yes, that Aboriginal council that now gets approval over the top of the Victorian state government over every law, the members of that are all being paid six-figure salaries. Oh, I can't believe it's happening. Victoria, Victoria, Victoria. I know you've got an election in November. I couldn't tell you who you have as an opposition. I don't think any of you know who you've got as an opposition because they're weak. They say nothing. They do nothing. And a bit like the federal Liberal National Coalition, they'll say one thing to your face and go in and vote the opposite the same day. And this is something that the Liberal and National Party have yet to figure out. And I hope that the Pauline Hanson One Nation group have. Their intent means a great deal. Their word means a great deal. They say they're going to do something, they do it. What we have to be careful of is what they say or what they don't say they'll do, because in many cases, that's what we need done. And it remains to be seen whether or not One Nation is in fact going to be able to stand up to that. I really, really hope they can. I really hope they will. I really hope that this tsunami of support continues through Farah and the by-election that's going to happen there shortly, and into a federal election in a couple of years' time. In Queensland, One Nation is now ahead of both Labor and Liberal Party as preferred vote. Nearly 31% to 29%, and a lot less for the Liberal National Party, or the Labor Party, I beg your pardon. So, yeah, that's a significant issue for them. South Australia is also firming up on a federal level too. But why? Because I think One Nation do care about regional people. It's not that they don't care about city people, but they do care about regional people. Interestingly, mainstream media is now also pumping out stories about Aussies moving out of Sydney and Melbourne in particular, because it's been taken over by immigrants who can't drive. I added the last bit. There is other evidence that our housing markets are being jacked up by new home buyers, particularly coming in from overseas. These new immigrants are able to get funding for houses. They get the 5% home loan deposit thing and a few other bits and pieces that they can get for coming from hardship areas, yada, 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 yada. A lady posted this up in a property forum. Hi, everyone. We're expecting to receive our subclass 191 PR soon. That's a whole heap of residency, permanent residency. We currently have around $200,000 in savings and are both working full-time with a combined annual income of about $180K. Our plan is to first purchase a new home using the first home owner grant, and then 3 to 6 months later buy an investment property. We just wanted to check whether or not the strategy is realistic and achievable. Now, look, I don't think there's absolutely anything wrong with asking for that sort of advice, but further down in the chat, it reveals that this is a couple from the subcontinent who are making very good money. They were making very good money on the subcontinent, but they've come to Australia because they were offered a great deal to come to Australia. And why wouldn't you? Let's face it. If you looked out your window in Mumbai and then you came and looked out your window on the Gold Coast, you'd know where you'd live. So, or even out in the bush. Not that we see too many of them out there in the bush. However, our home loans, our Australian taxpayer dollars are what is funding these home loans, is where I'm going. How do you feel about that? I don't know that it's something that I'm particularly fond of. Maybe that's something you can talk to your local member about as well. Send them an email and say, do you know this is possible? Or better still, don't believe me. Go and do your own research on it. It's probably the best idea for us all. All right, I'm going to love you and leave you. I haven't heard or seen from Vince. I've tried ringing him a couple of times today. I imagine he's still asleep. So we shall see what happens. I'm going to be on the road tomorrow. There will be if you are watching the YouTube channel, youtube.com // at VOF, the at symbol, VOF. I'm going to attempt a live stream with another microphone off that phone. And I may have a special guest. We'll see how it goes. He might be camera shy. We'll see. But that'll be on tomorrow's show. Yeah. Yes, on the road again tomorrow. At least, well, I'll be on the road all day, up and back. But be heading north and then heading south again, heading up to see Margie Sedgman, picking up something from her so I can help out Skipper Pete. Believe it or not, this is how the family works, folks. So tomorrow, rather than hide it all, I'll tell you what I'm doing. I'm going to see Margie Sedgman because Margie has an H2 unit that she has no further need for. She never had it fitted to her car because just before she got it, she got ill and she won't be doing any driving or towing a caravan around or needing it. So Skipper Pete, who already has an H2 unit on his vehicle, is getting another vehicle. He's sort of inherited it, if you like, and he has so much love for the machine now that he wants to put another unit on his car. So I've facilitated a purchase, if you like. So Skipper Pete's going to get Margie's H2 unit, but there is a bit of a difference of about 1,200 kilometres between them. So I'm going to be the money man and pick it up and send it up to Pete, while I also send off a bit of programming kit that has to go back to Tim to get reprogrammed. I will also poke my head in and potentially see Sunflower. I don't know if she's in the chat tonight. I haven't told her that I'm coming, but there might be room for a coffee with her somewhere. And I will be calling in to see Greg, who I am taking the X39 patches to. So that'll be my day on the road. And you may well hear me getting rather angry if I'm stuck in traffic getting back. Tomorrow night might be later than normal, depending on what time I get back or if I get stuck in traffic. But the goal is to be back here by 4 o'clock. If I can be back by 4 o'clock, we will have a show at 6:30 as normal. If I can't, well, it might be a bit later. We'll just see how it goes. Anyway, have yourself a wonderful evening, folks. If you're off enjoying the magnificent pictures that are being created, that are coming from the moon, will be interesting to see what dark side of the moon pictures they do show us. Or you might just want to go out tonight and do what this bloke did. And that'll certainly stop you being one of the dickheads on the road.
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up.
Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life.
It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back.
Does anybody else want to stay?
Let's ride!